welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. I have Chris with us, and we are going to get into AI and automation and how to stop leaving money on the table. Chris, welcome to the show. I know this is going to be a very educational episode.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, Alicia. I'm glad to be here.
Let's start by just digging into AI. It's here to stay.
It's not going anywhere,
It's
that's
not
for
going
sure.
anywhere. It's building some pretty serious momentum.
Yeah,
A lot of business owners have already started to jump on the bandwagon. We know, we know that we need to always be innovating.
correct.
You don't innovate, you get left behind.
Yeah,
There's no dinosaurs walking around anymore.
I go to
Uh,
Florida, you see a few, but yeah.
Well, aside from some chickens, right? They say chickens are our ancestors of dinosaurs. But for those listening, there probably is a mix of feelings about
Yeah,
AI and automation and how to integrate it into their
yeah,
business in a way that actually helps, really helps. Let's let's talk a little bit about. And I want to start by playing devil's advocate here a little bit. For those individuals who feel resistant to it, I want to talk about that first. And what are you seeing? I mean, you're an expert on this subject. What are you seeing in terms of the businesses that are slow to adopt and make some important changes internally?
yeah. I see a lot of business owners who are somewhat afraid of AI, and I believe the reason why they're afraid of AI is not because of AI itself, it's because of the unknown. They don't know how it works. They don't know what it is really, and they look at it as, oh my God, is that going to replace me? Is that going to crash the world in terms of unemployment rates and taking away jobs and maybe even taking away what they're doing? And while the answer is yes to some of it, yes, it will take away some jobs. It will take away some industries or some occupations in general. Um, you don't necessarily need to be afraid of it because it really is just a tool. And if you start understanding it, start knowing what it is, and just see it as a tool and not some sort of a doomsday, oh my God, there's going to be robots running around killing us. It's actually not that scary. It's something that, if you embrace it and start working with it and start understanding it, yes, it might replace what you're doing right now, but you'll get to do something much cooler or something much more enjoyable. So I think a lot of people are afraid of it, and I understand why they're afraid of it. But at the same time, I also think it's more the unknown than the technology itself. If you look at history, doesn't matter how far back you look, we as humans have always evolved. As humans have always implemented new technology. I'm not that old, so I can't really speak from the 60s or 50s. But even in my little over 35 years on Earth, cell phones when I grew up was not a thing. Now I go shopping on a cell phone. I get our groceries on the cell. That was unheard of when I grew up. And, a lot of people were probably scared of that back then as well. I don't know because I was a kid. But yeah, it's nothing scary. It's just something that you need to learn and understand and use it as what it is, which is a tool.
Let's go a step further. Because for an individual who is not on the cutting edge, leading edge conversation of what AI can do for us in business, that we'll call it ignorance, and that's not a diss on anybody. I'm sure there's plenty of things I'm not, in
You don't
the
know what you don't
in
know,
the
right?
know on either, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about some of the ways that we are able to implement AI for optimization, for leverage, and the ability to grow and scale perhaps in ways that were not previously available to us.
Yeah, and there are plenty of examples. Like one customer segment that I work with mostly are very traditional businesses, like businesses that actually they don't do anything techy. It's your mom and pop stores. It's your plumbers. It's very traditional kind of businesses who were the owners or the operators. They're really good at what they're doing, and it's hard to AIify plumbing. But everything else that they do, a lot of times, those people are very talented at their craft, at their, call it art. I mean, it's not art, but you know what I mean. But they're really not that good at everything else. And oftentimes they overspend by hiring the wrong people to do that for them, or they overspend by trying to do it themselves and not really knowing what to do. And that's a prime example where AI can come in and take the burden of doing all the grunt work that you don't really want to do off of your shoulders, implement it, learn how to use it, and then you can focus on what you really like to do and squeeze in much more customers than your competitors simply because, well, you don't have to sit at the office that you don't want to do anyways for like 3, 4 hours a day doing all the paperwork and whatnot. You can automate all of this. You can let AI handle a lot of those tasks, and you get to do what you actually enjoy doing, and that cannot be automated.
So for those of us who are thinking, "Ooh, I might be missing out on some things here," can you school us a little bit on maybe some of the fundamentals currently? I mean, who knows what's going to be out? If somebody's listening to this a year later, or 2 years later, 5 years later,
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot new that we're not privy to in this conversation.
yeah.
But from your perspective, looking at the majority of businesses, what are some of the kind of fundamental AIs that people can be implementing and integrating into their business to get more of that leverage and optimization?
Yeah, I can give you a few examples. Actually, one is an example of one of my own companies. So I co-founded a company called Bring My Song to Life a while ago. And what we do there is we create custom-made songs for special occasions. So if you have an anniversary or if you have a wedding coming up or anything like that, instead of giving flowers, you can tell your story, and we create a song. My company creates a song based on your personalized story. Um, you know, Prior to 2021, all of this was done manually. We had a staff of musicians that did all the songs and everything. Till I started playing around with AI, and AI was actually better at writing the lyrics. At first, we only did the lyrics with AI than our human songwriters. Like we still had humans oversee it, basically proofread, make sure it makes sense and everything. But all of a sudden, we could go from like 20 songwriters to 5 songwriters because we just had AI write the songs. AI kept developing, so we're like, wonder if it can make music. So we built an app just internally for us to kind of start experimenting with making music with it. Worked out great. So now instead of taking us a day to make a song, it takes us literally 10 minutes to make a song. Um, it's a small group of musicians that are basically overseeing the technology. Nobody's actually doing the music anymore, and it scaled our business from where we could handle maybe 50 songs a month to now we can handle 500 songs a month. It's no problem with that. So that's one example, more on a my own kind of business. Another example that is actually a client. He's a consultant for municipal governments, and a lot of times when you pitch to a request for a quote, it's a huge pitch. It's like 20, 30 pages where you have to write based on what their specs are, and write it exactly as it is. So he hired me to kind of streamline his operations, and I came in and I built him a custom bot that basically just takes the RFQs from municipal governments, and knows his business. So we basically trained the bot on his business operation, on his previous projects that he worked on. And now the bot is basically writing him all the proposals. And so instead of spending a day writing a proposal, it takes like 10 minutes to write it, proofread it, seal it up, send it out. huge difference in his operations because now he doesn't have to spend time writing those things. He basically wrote them once, trained the bot, and now it's basically working on its own. So those are just two examples. There are a million examples on how you can integrate AI and automation into small traditional type of businesses. Um, I'm surprised myself every now and then where I get a new client and I sit down and I ask them, hey, what do you do manually? How does all of this work? Just try to get to understand how their business works, and then kind of play around with some AI solution. And I'm like, oh my God, this can be automated. Oh my God, this is so much better if you just have AI do it. And I get surprised every time I have a new client and look at what they're doing, and wow, there's a solution for you.
That's amazing. So now the gears are turning for people because there probably are a lot of areas in everyone listening in their respective business where they are wasting way too much time, incredibly inefficient. Their employees potentially are incredibly inefficient.
Yeah,
Uh, they're losing money. They're hemorrhaging money if they would be willing to be a little bit more innovative
I
and
agree.
look at where they can optimize using the technology that is available. So
Yeah,
for someone who is not quote, quote, tech savvy. I mean,
yeah,
how often have you heard that, right?
yeah,
Uh, and they're thinking to themselves, that's all great, Chris. Makes complete sense. I would love to be able to do that. I can't figure this stuff out. I
yeah.
wouldn't know what to do. Now, I know you're a consultant. I know you are a very busy consultant and you may not have the bandwidth to take people on, but perhaps you can provide a little bit of guidance here. Where can someone start?
The cool thing with AI today is that it's really just a large language model, right? Like we don't have, like they're working on more advanced models and everything. But at the end of the day, everything that we currently have in AI, especially for small, medium-sized businesses that want to integrate this, it's all based on large language models, right? So the cool thing about it is you don't really have to understand a whole lot about how to implement things. It's all based on what you already do. It's all based on language. We all know how to speak. We all know how to write, most of us. So it's really not that difficult to understand and operate. Once it's implemented, and I agree, you probably need a consultant to help you with implement some of those solutions. But once they're implemented, there isn't a huge learning curve on how to operate something like that. I was speaking with the city manager here in Texas a couple of months ago. Told him all the cool things that AI can do for them potentially, and he was like, Chris, I love all of this. I love hearing all of this. I'm 60. I don't know if I can learn a whole new technology. And I whipped out my phone just with ChatGPT. I was like, you can't tell me that you don't know how to learn how to chat with someone because I'm pretty sure you already do that. And I showed him how ChatGPT, like this is the first time he saw ChatGPT, right? So I showed him how ChatGPT works, and I was like, that's AI. Like if we implement something for your city, that's literally how it's going to be. Like it's all based on text prompts. It's all based on what you already do anyways. It's all based on large language models that we as humans gave to the technology. So it's no different. So it's really like to those business owners who are like, oh my God, this is a new technology. I will never learn how to do it. I had a hard time to go from fax to email. It's some people did that. It's not that difficult because a lot of the things that you already do, you can just implement that with your AI solutions as well.
What I want to talk about for just a moment is how you got to this place. So you had other businesses,
Yeah.
successful businesses in the past. How in the world did you end up doing this?
I love technology. I'm not a funny thing is I'm not even the techie. Like I'm not. I'm not writing code or anything like that at all. I started, co-founded a business back in 2016 called Tunely, which is a music discovery platform and an online recording studio. So what we did back then is we took the whole music recording process from from physical in a studio to virtual, basically an online recording studio. Raised some funds, you know, came to America with it, and eventually transitioned out of that business. It's still running. New CEO is now based in Los Angeles. But I always looked at new technologies. I always looked at, okay, what's possible, and I've always been a huge fan of automation. Like I always joked if I could automate my life, I'd do it. So I've always been a huge fan of automation. Back in 2021, when I started transitioning out of my own business, I started looking at, okay, what's possible with automation? What are some small businesses? What are they doing right now that could be automated? And I started working with Zapier, for example, to build very simple automations that were simple to me, but looked like voodoo magic to some of those businesses that I worked with. And that's kind of how I stumbled into it. Like I started working with small, medium-sized businesses back then, and then 2021, AI really started taking off, and I started looking into that. At the time, I was also helping startups writing business plans. All of a sudden, I was like, that ChatGPT thing looks funny. Let's try to write a business plan with it. I started doing that. It's like, wow, it saves me a lot of time. So I used that, and just everybody else figured it out, and I didn't get any business with that anymore. So that's how I kind of got into it, and started learning all that stuff, and learning how to use it, and learning how to implement it. And yeah, I kind of stumbled into it just because I always like to be on the leading edge of technology.
So speaking of that leading edge of technology, I'm just curious, what do you think we're going to see a year from now, five
Oh my
years from
God.
now?
It's hard to tell. Like this is moving so fast. And the thing is like, I don't know if any of your audiences is working for like large AI companies, but I'm sure that, what we see right now is just the tip of the iceberg. Like they working on bigger things right now, like at OpenAI and whatnot. They're working on things that we probably can't even imagine. I had one client. It's a funny story actually. I had one client um, who is doing UI UX. So that's her gig. She's doing all the UI UX for online platforms, but also for like physical products like smart fridges and all that kind of stuff. She told me that they started working on smart fridges 20 years ago. The first smart fridges came out like, I don't know, 10 years ago. But she was like 20 years before that, they started working on it. They started hiring her to come up with the UI UX for it. Nobody even knew about smart fridges when they started working on it. So it's I can't even imagine what they're working on right now, and what we might see in a year from. Think about it. ChatGPT, I think came out. It was the fall of 2021. I want to say it's 2021 or 2022. So it's not that long ago. And from when it first came out to where we are right now, it's kind of crazy how fast all of this moved. So I don't even want to take a guess at where we're going to be at in a year from now.
Someone listening to this at some point in the future, for you listening and you're thinking, wow, these guys are like back in the dark ages with this conversation. It
Yeah.
is currently January of 2025. So yeah, things will be different fast, I'm sure, based on what we've seen.
Here's the cool thing about AI and private for-profit businesses. We run those businesses. We don't have a whole lot of red tape, especially here in the United States. It's different in Europe. But yes, especially here in the United States and to an extent here in Canada, we don't have a whole lot of red tape. We can implement those things. We can innovate with those new technology, new solutions. I think it would transform businesses for the better. Um, Areas where this is not going to move as fast are areas that are very highly regulated. So, for example, aviation. The FAA is probably not going to authorize fully automated flights anytime soon. And for better or for worse, I don't know. I'm a pilot myself, so I kind of like being in the cockpit and not having just AI handle the flight. Um, and in the medical field, there's a lot more red tape than private businesses. But in private businesses, like we can implement all that stuff, and we are the ones actually innovating and showing what's possible with it, so that the more regulated industries will come afterwards. We're kind of like you know, the trial for that, which is cool because we get to do all of this fun stuff without having to justify everything.
So, final thoughts on this for the business owner who has stuck with us, they're still with us.
Yeah,
Maybe they're sitting on the edge of their seat. Maybe they're driving in the car and thought, oh, this is interesting enough to listen all the way through. What do you want to leave our listeners with on this subject? Some final thoughts, some tips, something to help people get aligned with what is possible for them when they are bringing in these resources and
mm,
they're optimizing their business with them.
yeah. It goes back to what we started talking about in the beginning. It's like don't be afraid of it. Like I understand if you don't fully embrace it, but also don't be afraid of it. Just educate yourself on what it is, and once you know what it is, it's going to be a whole lot less scary than what a lot of people think it actually is. So that's number one. And number two, I mean, if there are tools that will make your life easier and that might make your business more profitable, why wouldn't you want to look into those? I don't know a whole lot of business that still use fax machines. Uh, Finally, I know a few still, but not a whole lot of them, right? Like most people went from, the dark ages of fax and letters to now email. So why not look into that new technology? It's not different than what it was back then, where you went from an old technology to a new technology. And now this is just something new. You either learn how to use it and know what it is, or others in your field will do it, and you might get left behind. It's simple as that.
This is the perfect time for me to ask how our listeners can connect with you, Chris.
I got a website. It's chriserhardt.com. So basically just my name.com. Um, you'll find my email address there, I think. And you can just email me if you have any questions, obviously, and try to keep my blog up to date every now and then. So if there's anything that you find interesting, feel free to read it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being with
Thanks for
us.
having me. Thank you very much for having me.
Very leading edge conversation, at least at the time of this recording.
Yeah, 6 months
Uh,
from now, you're like, oh my God, what they were talking about.
had to throw that in there for a little bit of irony, since what we're talking about here moves so incredibly fast.
Yeah,
And uh, it's funny because I know that there are people who are still a little bit resistant to smartphones or to, you know, they're attached to that fax machine. And a
mm,
lot of times it's these silly kind of subconscious psychological attachments to what is known and familiar. Um, it doesn't need to be like that.
it doesn't. It doesn't. You know, funnily enough, I'm on the leading edge of those kind of things, and at the same time, I fly a 64-year-old plane with no modern technology on it. Kind of
Well,
ironic in a way.
that just goes to show you don't have to, completely transition away from what you love, what you appreciate, what
You
you
don't.
value. It's this is a holistic journey. Entrepreneurship really does need to be a very holistic journey, and you've got
I
to
agree.
you've got to innovate, but you also have to appreciate the basics and the fundamentals because those never
Your your
change.
your business is there to make money, right? That's what pays for your life. That's what pays for your hobbies that might be, antique cars. and that's where you can live out your nostalgia of old technology. But your business should make you money, and if there's anything that can help you make more, why not embrace it?
So true. Perfect way to end this episode. Thank you, Chris, for
Thank you very
joining
much for
us
having
today.
me. Thanks.
And thank you to everyone who has joined us. You know we're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.